There's nothing to stop here. Check it.
Okay, so good morning and welcome to General Finance of November the 7th. First going to begin with identifying any media on the line. I'm not seeing no media on the line at this time. I'll then go into any changes or deletions to the agenda. And if there's no changes or additions or deletions, I'll look to a mover and seconder to adopt the finance agenda of November the 7th.
I will.
Moved by Michelle, seconder.
I'll second that.
Second by Carrie. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. We do have a delegation this morning. We have the Gavanillo School in terms of the ISC funding. I know obviously this is an ongoing issue that we're continuing to assert pressure. So we do have presenters joining us this morning. I will look to our presenters. I'm just going to go on mute. And good morning to each of you.
Okay, thank you for having us. This is Ruby Jacobs speaking. I'm chair of the board of Gavanillo, and on behalf of the board, I'm here. And with me, I'll let Lucille introduce herself.
Lucille Akawensi, board secretary.
And
Arnold Jacobs, board member.
we've come to, I want to, first of all, thank you for getting us on here. We had to postpone our first attempt to get on the agenda for finance. So we're thankful to get on today. And we sent a briefing note forward of our items. The first one is to try and so that we can get an annual budget plan cycle for between the KG school and Six Nation Elected Council and ISC, and in terms of the finance offices, so that funding can be identified. Say in December, the business cycle starts around. You get ready in December with your budget for the next year. You present it through the system to get approvals, and then you submit it to the funder for approval for April 1st. Usually that's what I'm used to for rolling through the finance business cycle of a year for programs. And this has been very, very difficult for us here. We can't seem to somehow establish the annual funding budget. And if it takes all three of us, we should be able to get together to do it. And so that it's set for the year and it doesn't have to go through all kinds of revisions through the year, and nobody can answer questions or know where we're at exactly or how much is coming. This has been going on now with Gavanillo for years and years, and we tried to fix it, and it did fix for 1 year after that school meeting in Toronto. We spoke right to ISC. It was okay that next year. But now it's back to the same way. And we understand from their comments is that they send the funding all in one big lump sum for all the whole education business here. And then there's some efforts to try and delineate who gets what. So this is what we're trying to work out so that it doesn't take the time, the stress, the worry of how much money we got to spend and how can we prepare our annual budget and be safe with it. If it doesn't work out, do we have to do layoffs? Do we have to do this? It's really threatening trying to run an organization when it's so insecure like that. So we're asking on this item if we could have arrange a meeting between these different organizations to establish an ongoing protocol so that doesn't have to happen. It really causes considerable distress for your office, I know, because we deal with your folks here and trying to find out who to talk to in Toronto. We had to go this year to Dallas Anderson, he's the regional education person for this area, and he directed us to the folks that we should talk to. Even from the council's end, they didn't know who the contact was there in the finance department. It took a long time to find that, even to try and get our budget. And we've had about 4 or 5 issuings of this is your budget, and they've all changed. And some of the things on O&M really was we wondered about, because it said in the first one that the O&M, we were allocated 30.1 million for O&M. And we know that's the amount of the funding requested for the actual school construction. Why was that on there? We tried for a long time to get an answer, and we still don't have an answer what happened there. So these are, and I know that the ED was told by the finance director here that there was more money for O&M for Gowanio. Well, if there is, we'd like to know that, if that's true, because the space is a real issue for O&M. So those are points that go along with that. I'll just let Arnold ask anything, or Cecile if I missed any of the reasons why we would like that. And then we'll talk about the quarterly cash flow. Got anything to add? And we even received this letter from Six Nations of the Grand River saying Gowanio is going to get over around almost $5 million. But when you add up what's on the budget report that came from council to us, it doesn't add to that. So what's the difference there? What happened and so on? Like, we're just trying to really clarify for all of us, all our organizations, so that we don't have these wonderings. And we're trying to run a safe and stable situation here, and it's difficult this way. So you can help us get a joint meeting.
So I just wanted to add that when my mom was on the principal, she talked about the same thing 30 years ago. All the time, every year is a struggle to get the money for the school. So can we finally get something in place where it's secure, what we're asking? There's no questions asked after this point. We're going to have a budget set. We're going to have our money, defined for us. So 30 years is long enough, I think, to kind of go through the motions of, being unstable for us, for Gowanio. We need something solidified, like yesterday. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
We know that like we work with staff and finance, and some of them are they know exactly what we're talking about. Even the staff knows. We had to have her help us this year to get some answers.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you to Ruby, Cecilia, and Bob for joining us this morning, and again bringing forward your concerns. This is another issue on top of what we're already trying to do with the construction funding. So just before I go to further questions or comments, I know we do have members of our finance team on the line. Just wondering if perhaps I can get a check-in with them to see how we could further look to streamline this. And to your request, Ruby, we can work on that ASAP to start to get that meeting in place. So Wayne or Jennifer?
Yes, good morning, Chief, and good morning, everyone. Thank you. I will initially defer to Jennifer right now, but I will certainly be here to add as well and clarify. Because I know that Jennifer did meet with the Gowanio staff. Her and Anna Cecile met previously, so I will defer at this point. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jen.
Wayne. Thank you, Wayne. Hello, everybody. So yes, Wayne's correct. In early September, I met with the staff of Galvaneo with Anna Cecile. And at that meeting, we walked through where you were referencing the $30 million, and we showed them what that was. And what it was there was an amount that was shared with you that was the overall budget for all of Six Nations departments, and it was showing your piece of that. And I know we had a lengthy discussion because the amount was 24,000 out of that 30 some odd million that was showing. We walked through, showed them where the 30 million came from, and assured them that that's where the 24,000 came from. Now, since then, I have talked to ISC. I've talked to them in the last couple of weeks to try to determine where the allocations come from. I did read the briefing note that you sent forward, and it had said that the understanding was that the O&M was established under square feet. So I verified that as well. It's actually under square meters, but that's only for Six Nation assets. So I asked them how the $24,000 O&M allocation came from for Galvaneo, because it was not based on square footage or area for Galvaneo. And they are in the midst of getting back to me. They haven't provided me with the answer of where the $24,000 allocation came from, but they did assure me that it was not based on area of assets of Galvaneo at all. In reference to the amount discrepancy between the audited financial statements and what you received, I don't know what your records indicate that you received, but I do know what ours do. So on the audited financial statements, it said $4.756 million. And if we add up all of the amounts that we had given out to Galvaneo, it came out to $3.866 million with an $890,000 balance outstanding, which was issued on May 1st. So some of the difference is that the 4.756 was the amounts that had been provided, and from accounting standards, that's what is presented on the financials. And then the actual cash outflow of that was $890,000 short, which was then given in the next fiscal. So just because of a timing difference, there's a discrepancy for there. For the fiscal year 23 budget amounts, what we have confirmed from ISC at this moment is 3.913 of new funding for this fiscal period. So we have a total of $4.8 million in cash that's going out. So that's the 3.9 million for the new funding plus the 890,000 that was outstanding. So from a cash perspective, it's $4.8 million. However, from a funding perspective and what you would see on the audited financials, if they were issued, say today, then it would say 3.9. So some of that difference variance is because of accounting standards and how it's presented on there. To date, we have issued 3.8 million of that. The remaining 968,000 is not released yet because we have not received it from ISC. So the way that this works, or the way that the procedure, I guess, is that every single month we go through all of our cash receipts from ISC. We take a look at what was it received, what program was it for, Galvaneo or otherwise, and then we establish, okay, which funds need to be distributed because now we have the funds. So that's sort of how it's sitting at this moment. I hope that complies with the records that you have. And if not, I am more than willing and able to meet with you to sort of walk through specifically and try to come to the bottom of what's happening here.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that background. I'm going to look and open the floor up to any questions or comments. Just really quickly, has there been any discussion in terms of block funding, specifically with Galvaneo?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, maybe Ruby, are you able to?
Does that mean like no, we haven't had that discussion.
So maybe And that's what we can come up with in
Do that if you. Sorry. Am I talking? Sorry, folks, I'm not used to this program here yet. We are concerned about the transfer of education. You know, you're working on that through that lifelong learning task force. So to take block funding, is that considered education transfer? You know, and why can't we just figure out, what do we get right now? Is it a contribution agreement? That this is what we don't even know from you, how you work with the government. Do you get a contribution agreement for us every year? Or how do you work that? And we would like our funding identified clearly what it is and on an annual basis, and whatever happens from the way it's been happening would require discussion with the full board and so on. I don't have an answer for that. I know you can explore different ways, but unless the community is willing to give up their and take over education, that has to be ratified by the whole community. And unless they give you the money you need, would you be willing to do that? And we're in transition too from the building. For the school that's coming up, there may be a lot of families, and as evidence shows with our research, there would be a lot of families want to come back to Gowanio for learning, for their children's learning. So there would be changes that would be required. And if you got a 5-year thing, it doesn't allow you to do things like that, if I remember rightly from learning about health transfer. So we need to watch out how we do these things. I'm just cautioning about transfers. That's the people's voice has to be shown at that time, whether we take it over. Are they going to pay the money for what's needed, or put a simple administrative funding thing together where we have no control or any decision making? We have to follow the rules even though, and if you fail, you go in third party management. So those are all issues that I think they're grappling with their research on the lifelong learning. But we're interested here in making a school go year to year until whatever happens in the future safely and solidly. So, and it's been a rocky road trying to find our budget every signed agreement. I don't even know who signs our agreement with this.
Thank you for that, Ruby. And I'll just touch base with Jennifer just on confirmation of a few of those items that was raised by Ruby, and maybe wanted to, I guess, not necessarily look, because I know obviously you walked us right through in terms of the transfer of education, which we're very much still in the research phase, like as you've mentioned with the lifelong learning task force. I guess my comments were coming from a way of looking at, I guess, creativity in how we can further the flow through rather than just a year to year. But just really quickly before I know, and again, there is still other ways that we are approaching, the whole construction funding. I know this is a little bit separate in terms of, annual and O&M and so forth, but there is other creative ways that we are looking at in terms of the construction funding and what we can possibly do. But maybe if I can, just before I go over to Hazel, Jennifer, if you could just maybe comment on a few of the items in terms of the contribution agreement and so forth. Or maybe that's a Wayne question.
Jennifer, or okay. So with regards to the contribution funding, yes, we receive next year's funding amounts in March. That's the earliest that we do get the contribution funding agreement for the following year. So with regards to the school funding, there is an amount within that contribution funding agreement for both of the schools, being Galvaneo and the Everlasting. So, and the allocation for on an annual basis is done on a nominal roll basis. So if budgets change from year to year, it would be due to a change in the nominal rolls within the schooling.
Thanks for that, Wayne. Just really, if I can check in with Hazel, she has her hand raised.
Yes, I would just like to ask the question with regard to finance and sending budget amounts and clarification. Would it not be a good idea that at the beginning of each fiscal year that a formal letter would be prepared outlining the total amount of money that's going to be allotted for the school? And each time that allotment is transferred throughout the fiscal year, that it would be better tracked in terms of knowing exactly what you're dealing with, and the information is right there on the paper. I do know that past history, the school throughout its years has really sadly suffered when they've come right down to the point where they have no money and they had to get bank drafts over and over simply because finance did not submit the funding that was earmarked for them. And I think to this day, I think the school kind of lives in fear of, is this going to happen again? Because they've been through that so many times. So I think in order to squelch all of that and to have this information provided right at the beginning of each fiscal year on a letter, it would probably solve a lot of problems, and it would also put the fear that does exist from having to go to get a bank draft. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
That's a good point. Thanks, Hazel, for that. And I think with our team here at Finance, obviously working out to Ruby's point in terms of that procedure and laying that out clearly, and to Bob's point of defining what that looks like, I think that's can be easily achieved through in our own internal teams are here within community. The other piece that I think we also, and this is something that we've already been in discussions with the new incoming Michael O'Brien, who's taking over for Ann Scott as the RDG. We all already have been in conversations with him on a few different other items, but we'll be glad to add this piece to our meeting that we're looking to confirm with Michael, and be able to bring in perhaps Ruby, Cecile, and Bubs to that meeting so that we can clearly define from its perspective, as opposed to just not only ours, and that we could further get a clear definition on that. I seen Jessica had her hand raised. Jess?
Oh, Scano. So I'm the new executive director here at GoNeo. So I just wanted to introduce myself, and I was busy with the kids, so sorry I was late. But what I just wanted to talk about really quickly is like that these are really great things to be going for, and like that this is a great idea to get on the same page with the finances of this. And I think Hazel's right, is that letter that we used to receive, that was from IS that outlined everything. We used to get these letters and it said every dollar amount and like what it was allotted for, like spec ed, secondary, elementary, so that we knew our budget. We used to get that. And so this year was the first year we didn't receive it because they don't do them anymore. So that was fine once we figured out why. But Hazel's right, it would be really great to get that like formally from the band as soon as the amount is given, because the bank requires it. So our bank actually has been asking consistently since April for us to give them that paper. And what I've received is the spreadsheet from the band, and that was sufficient for this time, they said, but they really encourage something more formal. so that they can kind of make sure we're backed appropriately, for, financially. It's like our guarantee, right? So it was a little worrisome when we weren't getting that letter and not knowing why we weren't getting it, but they had let us know that funding has changed in the way that it's allotted. So that was really important to understand. And then I just really wanted to quickly go over the points that we had originally brought forward. Because we had asked about the O&M dollars. We had a meeting with ISC about how much O&M we get and how that's decided. And what we had found out was its amount of people per square foot. And so one of the things that we had wanted to put forward to, I think it would be Mike, they had instructed us to go to Michael Montour, is to calculate the spaces we use. So I'm not sure how the other schools calculate their space. And so what ISC had encouraged us is that if we utilize more than just these classrooms, that we should be including those spaces into our O&M calculation. So something that we have to do is, and I'm guessing the other schools measure their gym, measure their outdoor spaces. I don't know how it's calculated, honestly. It's by square foot is what I know. So if it's outdoor spaces, and if it's their gym, I'm wondering why we don't include the places we have to rent additionally, because if there's a raining, we have to rent the floor. So that can be upwards of like $800 a month for us to rent the floor once in a while. Once winter comes, it might be more. And we also have to rent buses to travel to Dijon to use a gym. And I'm sure the other schools calculate their gym as a part of their O&M and are receiving huge amounts for the spaces they occupy. But because we are in a special circumstance where we don't own the floor, we don't own the gym, and me and Danielle even talked about, should we be calculating the buses space, because we rent that every day to go to the gym and they're on that bus every day. So like, what should we be calculating in our O&M to get the proper amount? Because currently the amount we're getting for O&M isn't enough to cover our rent at the ILA. It's below that number. And if we add on the amount we pay for the floor rental, it's a lot less than what we receive. So we were wondering, and ISC was actually encouraging us to get our O&M recalculated, including the spaces we utilize. So we were wondering about that. We had originally wanted to rent the banquet hall, but there's, I think it's New Start, or Gila, I forget what it is. I think it's New Start because it's through Hagersville. They are renting it currently and don't have any plans of moving out just yet. So we won't have word on that from the ILA until New Start knows if they're moving. But yeah, that was some of the things in our meeting with ISC. They encouraged us to discuss with yous. So that was kind of something I wanted to put out there, is like, how is it calculated? Are we calculating all our spaces appropriately? If we're having to rent spaces, do we also need to calculate those? So that was something I wanted to put out to Michael, because they instructed us on that. And I don't know if anyone else has info on if we do want to rent the banquet hall, because currently we don't have space for our kids to do, like, say, their speech therapy or their occupational therapy services or a counseling session where they could be private. Because we're all crammed into these spaces, we don't have that option. So that was our purpose of trying to rent more space at the ILA. And they do have space across the banquet hall. On the other side, they're willing to rent as well. So we do want to pursue, growing a little bit here while we can, and utilizing as much space as we can. But ISC had instructed us to come to the Bend and talk about what does that look like, because we're not getting enough to even cover our rent for O&M. And so they encouraged us to kind of go this avenue. So let me know what you think about that.
Okay, thank you, Nyama, for that, Justin. First of all, congratulations in your new role as the ED. I think you'll do phenomenal work. I want to jump right into the points that you've raised under O&M. I actually want to give Michael Montour, who I believe is online as well, opportunity to respond to some of these, because I totally agree with what you're saying. In terms of how do we make sure because it all comes down and boils down to ISK's calculations and ISK's formulas and all that stuff. But this, like you say, with Gawanino, it's all in a special circumstance. That's something, and I think we have to get even more creative to make sure that we're offsetting the cost for the school, so that you again aren't having to necessarily run in a deficit to even cover rent, for example. Like that to me is a huge political advocacy piece that we can further support you in. Just really quickly, if I can touch base with Michael Montour.
Hey everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Everyone? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm really glad we were able to do this by Zoom, because I have books and books and books, and I can kind of explain exactly how this is done. So Indigenous Services Canada funds our assets, including our schools, through this manual. There's definitions. I'll just read you the school definitions. A building or space in a building where a curriculum at the kindergarten, primary, elementary, or secondary level is taught. Could include space for classrooms, industrial arts, home economics, computer science, commercial, library, gymnasium, and directly associated support space. Example, principal's office, staff room, washroom, storage, etc. So what happens is every 3 years they send down a consultant who does a report. I have 4 of these binders. This is how thick this guy is. And the amount that they fund our schools is $75.80 per square meter. So I would encourage you to, figure out what you use in ILA, even the entranceway. If you rent the floor or whatever you have to do, and there's a form we have to fill out, and I can definitely work with you to add that. And just kind of as an additional point of information, we're short funded for our facilities for what we do, maintaining our schools ourselves, by about $300,000 to $500,000 a year, which comes out of the community. And then we have to come back to ISK to say, we're short this much. And for the most part, they've come back and been able to adjust at the end of the year. So maybe there's a conversation to be had between ISK representatives and yourself. And if you need support, I'm happy to support as well, just to kind of kick off that conversation, because I know that once the new Gawanio school is built, I've heard that the desire is for it to be kind of funded the same way as the 5 federal schools that we manage are funded. So I think it's time. It's a good time to kind of plant that seed and start to get into that mindset and do the advocacy that's needed to add that. Thanks.
I agree. Thanks, Mike, for that. I think again, just and I know we go by the binders and the books and what they lay out. I think it's this again is going back to Jess's point of the circumstances that the school is in, where we can kind of maybe open the doors up further on that advocacy piece to try not to go within the realm of what they set out, because this is not like any other situation per school. And I do understand. I know, Mike, we've also done work to see the increase of O&M dollars, and so that we don't have to also get in, because as you've mentioned, we're always shortfalled when it comes to our schools, even the federal schools. So do agree with you, Michael. Perhaps maybe even we can look to work with Jess and Ruby and team, as well with our finance team, to kind of pull this all together. And then when we set our meeting with Michael O'Brien, we're now prepared to then say, here's exactly what we need, and to maybe even go outside of the realm of what we're used to. Because again, I want to heavily rely on the fact that this is a total different circumstance for schooling. Jess?
I was just wondering who measures those things? Like, do we have to have an official person to do that? And would the space at Dijon count? Because we travel there daily to utilize it. So I don't know, like, if that's already covered under you guys' O&M, we wouldn't include the Dijon space. I'm not sure. Because we have to pay to get there. That's travel, so it's different. But I can see it measuring that ILA floor, but I just don't know who would we get to do something like that. Would we hire someone, or would you guys send someone? I don't know.
Good question. I'm going to look to revert back to Michael.
We can do it either or, but just to the chief's point there, I think that's our best bet, is to not necessarily go by their books and binders and policies, but to say here's here's what it costs to run this school the way that it is now, and this is what we need. So if the financials that you have as far as O&M costs annually I think are key to our conversation. I think we that's the way we frame it, and I think that's the way that we really push our advocacy towards. But of course, we can assist with getting anything measured that you need.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. I think, Jess, to your point, I think, yes, we include everything. We include what it takes, the cost of travel. I mean, that's where we now get into the conversation of that creativity with ISK to say, here's the end reality of cost, as opposed to going and trying to match in per formula. So I would say, yes, include the just base, include what it costs for travel. And then let's talk about the advocacy pieces that we could do once the meeting is set. Ruby has further question, comment. Over to you, Ruby.
Thank you. I just want to add that we've been very thankful for the owner of the arena. He has really been generous in letting us rent that place for the amount that that you have on record. And we really appreciate what he's doing, and he done that out of the goodness of his heart. So that's how the money that we have has been identified as what he accepted for renting the school so far. You asked, where did that amount come, that 24,000? Well, that was the agreement between the original owner and back when Gawania moved in there. He agreed to let him rent for that low rent, and the community owes that man a lot of, he's done a lot. So we don't want to neglect that part of things, that the community member has really assisted here.
Can I just add that that's not our rent cost anymore? We actually pay $4,000 a month, plus renting the floor for anywhere between $800 and $1,000 a month. So it's around $5,000 a month to rent here. It's increased since we had originally come over, just because of the cost of things, I'm sure. And I still feel like that's a low amount, and I'm very grateful to Kurt. He's a great man, and he's so kind to the kids when he sees them. So I'm very, happy we're here. But it is quite costly. And if we want to rent extra space, it'll go above that amount. And currently our O&M is around $40,000. So we're short, automatically, without ever renting the ILA floor.
Okay, thank you for that, for that, Jess and Ruby, and do agree. I mean, I think it's community members, like Mr. Sires, who continue to progress this community in the way that they provide such generous contributions. Hazel, and then I'll go back over to Ruby. Hazel, you have the floor. Hazel, you might be on mute still.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to clarify if anybody knows for sure that once the new school is built and you've determined the space based on current needs, will that current amount be transferred over to the new school for an O&M, or will it be reassessed once you move into the new school and it'll go higher? How does ISK handle that?
I'll maybe look to defer. I know Michael has more, has worked directly with the bureaucratical side on the process and procedural, but I know usually just in the latest, we would get an additional amendment to our contribution agreement for any additional on top of funds of O&M for specifically dealing with our own schools. Michael, do you have anything further to add to that?
I think that's part of the conversation that needs to be had. A lot of the focus now has been on, capital to build this building, but we need to start really advocating for O&M once it's built. Yeah, that's a key thing that we need to put on the radar, because I haven't really seen anything to say that this is how it's going to be, or here's your funding levels, right? So something once we get to that point, because they are at the table, which is great, we need to really push that point.
Yeah, and I think it's good to note that, some of the challenges that we've had on the federal school side to help alleviate, the solution to moving forward for a support with Kate, Gowanio School. Back over to Ruby.
I want to say thank you for going through this. Then I see that we're gonna go forth with a meeting and deal with these issues. But the one part of the issue there that I added here was the quarterly cash flow. So instead of waiting for IS to give us their drops whenever they choose, if we could budget our money over the 4 quarters, like have equal amount, we know how much we spend each quarter. Could that be worked out too, instead of waiting and you don't know whether it's gonna come in March or July or whatever? And the quarterly way of doing business through the business cycle of the year, you can control things a lot better, you know what you're doing and so forth and so on. So we just like to add that to that little meeting with all of us this year. And thank you for hearing us on this part.
Thank you. Thanks, Ruby, for that. And I totally agree. I think that's something that, with our internal working group, our finance and your team and so forth, we should be able to come up with a creative way to get to see that through. So at least that gives, some stability and some, because I know it all leads back to planning, right? When you don't have, the secured funds that you need to operate, it really has an impact on planning. And so maybe perhaps we can look to Wayne as well as Jennifer to see if there's a creative way internally on our side of finance to say, regardless of timing on ISK's side, is there opportunity to maybe kind of have a scenario from, taking from another source to then supplement from when we do see funds coming in the quarterly time frame. Wayne?
Yes, Chief. Right now, Jennifer and her team have put in process a monthly review, as Jennifer had mentioned, of all of the incoming receipts. And that has been the past practice, is that funds are transferred to the external organizations as they're received. We can certainly look at and discuss an alternative approach and plan, not necessarily advancing, but sticking to regular and scheduled payments so that Gowanio can plan better their cash flow. I think, yes, if we sit down and talk, and we can certainly come out to an agreeable schedule as far as the receipts go.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thanks, Wayne. So what I'm suggesting then is, if you can, our finance team as well as Gowanio representatives, if you can work together on those pieces internally on the finance piece, so that we can again start to eliminate some of these challenges within our own internal. All while we'll do on the political side of things is set our meeting up with Michael O'Brien, also too with Gowanio. If you could work with Michael Montour. In our office, we'll set together a political advocacy plan to look at the whole O&M structure and issue, as well as the overall ISK funding issue. So that's where we kind of have two multi-pronged approach. So first is the internal finance, Wayne, Jennifer team work on those pieces. Second is the political advocacy side with Michael Montour of Public Works, as well as Gowanio team. In our office, at the Chief's office here, we'll come together, get our minds together, get our plans in place, have our meeting set with Michael O'Brien, and we'll go from there. So thumbs up, perfect. If I can maybe get a motion to that effect. Is there a mover and seconder willing to move on that motion? And again, that's moved by Hazel, seconder.
I'll second it, Melba.
Second, Melba, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? And perhaps maybe we can also look to a time frame. So we'll do this within the next, at least start to meet internally within the days to come, and then hopefully have our meeting set within the next 2 to 4 weeks, if that's doable. Further questions, comments, Helen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say when I was at the Indigenous Services gathering, joint gathering 2 weeks ago, when they were talking about education, they informed us that 10 schools are in the feasibility design stage. 10 are under construction. 2 have opened and they now have students. And I do believe all of these schools are under the regional education agreements. In other words, these are all schools where they took over their education. They never said anything about schools that we didn't take over their education.
Good point.
So
Thank
that's
you.
probably I would probably say that's a catch.
Agreed. And that's where again we have to be very cautious to Ruby's point as well. You know, when we talk about these specific items in relation to education. Thank you for that, Helen. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to the motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Looking to a mover and seconder for second reading, moved by Hazel, second
Melba.
second by Melba to waive second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for joining the call this morning. The team, looks like we have a lot of work to do, so our offices will be in touch and we'll go from there. Yeah, everyone, sorry. Oh, Ruby would like to have.
Just want to remind you. There,
Oh, just 1 second.
There's going to be an update for the school building project on, is it November 15th, right? 15th, for any of the council that wants to be on, but we do have our four councils that the council has assigned to the project team. And we'll be talking about those different streams and this new announcement. I don't know if it's a new announcement because we heard it a year ago about these $1 billion that they've put up for education and how that all works with what we're doing now. And we did get that letter back from Ann Scoton in the past to say go different tracks. Well, we're working on the ISC track capital, and we're working on the green, inclusive and green. So does this require a whole new proposal to be developed? And then they put new standards in the way. And since I've been involved, there's been about 4 different standard changes. We've had to readjust our whole project to suit those. One was put culture in, take one out, and green it up and so forth. So every time that takes a whole lot of adjustment and delays the project even farther. So that's why we were hoping to stick to at least these 2 streams we're on and make it happen. And we appreciate the council's support and hope that you can carry on working for us along the way. But we're going to be meeting on that team that day with the ISC team.
Okay, now Ruby, for that update, and do look forward to those conversations, and most definitely can look to the continued support on our end as well to continue asserting some pressure anywhere we can. So I do want to say thank you, Nyawa, to our presenters this morning. We do have some work to do, so we'll look to provide updates as that work continues. I will look to then our next agenda item, which I'll pass the floor over to Michael Montour to give a background. You see the recommendation on the agenda. This is in relation to our lagoons project. So I'll pass the floor over to Michael.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Michael Montour, Director of Public Works. So this recommendation is for a payment certificate number 1. So we had gotten funding to do some upgrades for our wastewater system. As a first step, what we did is we put in some solar power mixers into our lagoons to add capacity. And now the second part and the final part of our interim upgrades are putting in a force main, so a new pipe from the pump station that's nearby the Public Works office on 4th line directly into the lagoons to alleviate issues that we get into during heavy rain and snow melt periods, so that our system can keep up. And that work was awarded to Aecon Six Nations joint venture, and happy to say everything's gone quite well, and they're almost complete. But there's a payment as per the contract that's due, and due to the amount, it's here on the council general finance agenda to be paid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that background, Mike, for that. And just really quickly, I wanted to touch just to kind of give you some information in terms of what I've been trying to do. I'm currently the co-chair at the Indigenous Education Council at McMaster University. And as you know, universities, often get, some of funding to do, types of partnerships. We've done multiple partnerships with McMaster University in the past. One of those conversations that we're looking to have is, the wastewater, as when we talk about the water distribution lines and what that looks like. I mean, I think simultaneously, yes, we want to get those lines going and continue the phased approach in which we're doing, but we also, on the other hand, have to get the lagoon project in the wastewater under control and get these funds. I'm really happy to see this go through, but also wanted to bring you in, Michael, at a specific time to, once we meet with the president and the provost and so forth, so that we can kind of look to see if there's other opportunities in terms of funding and partnerships with universities to do this type of work. I know there's a lot of expertise in different areas, and that was one of the discussions that we had. And I just had a meeting on Friday with the Indigenous Education Council on, really amping up our partnerships with Indigenous communities on these types of initiatives, especially in the environmental sector. In what that looks like. So just wanted to give you as a heads up flag, Michael. I'll be reaching out to you further to kind of expand the discussion and to see where there's other potential opportunities, and really, again, getting back to creativity of how we can look to, not just, these funding streams, but other areas in the lines of universities, and, not even be specific to, cash flow per se, but also the expertise in the different sectors within the university itself, to maybe look to their resources on some of these things, because there is, multiple solutions that we can look to, and we're looking for the longevity, of these solutions. So I just wanted to highlight that piece. Further questions or comments in relation to the recommendation on the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing none at this time, so I will look to a mover and seconder on recommendation 1. Moved by Michelle, seconder. Seconded by Greg. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Moved by Michelle, seconder. Seconder for second reading. Second by Greg to waive second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for bringing this forward, and our office looks forward to connecting with you on the other opportunity that I just mentioned in relation to McMaster.
Oh, Chief. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, Council, that does complete our session for general finance. Oh,
Mark.
sorry, Becky.
Oh, you skipped the minutes.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you so much, Beck. Looking to reviewing of the adoption, or rather the reviewing of the general finance minutes of October 17th.
I'll move that, Chief.
Moved by Carrie, seconded by Michelle. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you for that, Becky. Our next item then, Council, is a motion to adjourn. Moved by Michelle, seconder. seconder to adjourn. Move second by Helen. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you, now, and to everybody for joining us this morning on General Finance. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow at General Council.